Join me as I explore the eerie Whitaker House and uncover the dark secrets hidden within, including the chilling history of a serial killer. The air in Willow Creek was thick with the scent of pine and the faint tang of rust from the old mill that loomed on the town's outskirts. It was a place where secrets clung to the shadows, whispered in the creak of floorboards and the rustle of leaves. The town was small, its population barely cresting 2,000, and its residents were bound by an unspoken code. You didn't pry, and you didn't speak of what you saw in the dark. That was how it had always been, until the summer of 2023, when the Hargrove family moved into the old Whitaker house on Maple Lane. The Whitaker house was a relic, a 3-story Victorian with gabled roofs and ivy strangling its faded clapboards. It had stood empty for nearly a decade, ever since Old Man Whitaker passed and his children fled town without looking back. The locals called it cursed, though they'd laugh when they said it, as if to ward off the chill that came with the word. The Hargroves, Mark, Ellen, and their 12-year-old daughter, Lily, didn't seem to mind the rumors. They were city folk, transplants from Chicago seeking a quieter life after Mark's tech startup folded. Ellen, a freelance illustrator, saw the house as a canvas for her creativity, its warped wood and stained glass windows inspiring her sketches. Lily, however, was less enthused. She missed her friends, her school, the hum of the city. Willow Creek felt like a prison, and the house, with its endless corridors and musty rooms, was her cell. The first few weeks were uneventful. Mark busied himself with repairs, hammering nails into sagging porch boards and scrubbing decades of grime from the walls. Ellen set up her studio in the parlor, where sunlight filtered through cracked windows, casting kaleidoscope patterns on the floor. Lily sulked, spending her days texting friends back in Chicago or wandering the overgrown backyard, where a rusted swing set groaned in the wind. The neighbors, curious but cautious, kept their distance, offering only polite waves and casseroles left on the doorstep. It was a fragile peace, one that shattered on a humid July night when Lily woke to the sound of footsteps in the attic. She lay in bed, her breath shallow, listening. The house was old, prone to settling, but these weren't the random pops and creaks she'd grown used to. These were deliberate, heavy, like boots, pacing on bare wood. Her room was on the second floor, directly beneath the attic, and the sound seemed to come from above her head, moving from one end of the house to the other. She clutched her phone, its screen casting a pale glow across her face, and considered texting her parents. But Mark and Ellen were asleep down the hall, and Lily didn't want to seem like a scared little kid. She was 12, practically a teenager. She could handle this. The footsteps stopped, replaced by a low, rhythmic tapping, like fingers drumming on a table. Lily's heart thudded. She slipped out of bed, her bare feet cold against the hardwood, and crept to her door. The hallway was dark, the air heavy with the scent of mildew. She hesitated, then grabbed a flashlight from her nightstand and padded toward the attic stairs at the end of the hall. The door was ajar, a sliver of blackness peeking through. She pushed it open, the hinges squealing, and aimed the flashlight up the narrow staircase. Dust motes danced in the beam, but the attic was silent now, the tapping gone. "Lily?" Ellen's voice, sharp with worry, cut through the quiet. Lily spun around, nearly dropping the flashlight. Her mother stood in the hallway, her robe tied loosely, her hair a mess of curls. "What are you doing up?" "I heard something," Lily said, her voice small. "In the attic." Ellen frowned, glancing at the open door. "It's an old house, sweetheart. Probably just the wind." "It wasn't the wind," Lily insisted. "It was footsteps and tapping." Ellen sighed, rubbing her eyes. "Okay, let's check it out together. Then you're back to bed." They climbed the stairs, the wood creaking under their weight. The attic was a cavern of shadows, cluttered with forgotten relics. A cracked mirror, a dressmaker's dummy, boxes of moldy books. The flashlight beam swept across the room, revealing nothing but dust and cobwebs. Ellen forced a smile. "See? Nothing here. Just your imagination." Lily didn't argue, but she didn't believe her mother either. She knew what she'd heard. As they descended the stairs, she glanced back, half expecting to see a figure watching from the darkness. There was nothing, but the unease lingered, a seed planted deep in her chest. The next morning, Mark dismissed the incident as a product of Lily's overactive imagination. "Old houses make noises," he said over breakfast, his tone cheerful but firm. "You'll get used to it." Lily didn't respond, her eyes fixed on her cereal. She didn't tell them about the dream she'd had after returning to bed. A dream of a man in the attic, his face hidden in shadow, whispering her name. The noises continued, sporadic at first, then nightly. Footsteps, tapping, sometimes a low hum like a voice muffled by walls. Lily stopped sleeping, her eyes ringed with dark circles. She began sketching what she heard, filling her notebook with images of shadowed figures and spiraling staircases. Ellen noticed the change in her daughter, the way Lily flinched at sudden sounds, the way she avoided the second floor after dark. She tried to talk to her, but Lily was evasive, her answers clipped. Mark, preoccupied with a new job prospect, brushed it off as preteen moodiness. But Ellen couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One afternoon, while Mark was at a meeting in the next town, Ellen decided to investigate the attic herself. She climbed the stairs, a flashlight in one hand, a crowbar in the other, just in case. The attic was, as she'd left it, cluttered and dusty, but there was a faint smell she hadn't noticed before, like damp earth and something metallic. She moved deeper, her flashlight catching on a stack of crates in the corner. One was open, its lid askew, revealing a bundle of yellowed papers and photographs. She knelt, sifting through them. The papers were letters, written in a spidery hand, dated from the 1970s. They were addressed to Margaret, signed by someone named Elijah. The tone was desperate, pleading, with phrases like, "You can't keep me here," and "They'll find us." The photographs were stranger. They showed a young woman, Margaret presumably, standing in front of the Whitaker house, her expression vacant. In some, she held a baby, its face blurred. Others showed a man, tall and gaunt, with eyes that seemed to pierce the camera. Ellen's pulse quickened. She didn't recognize the man, but something about him felt familiar, like a face from a half-remembered dream. At the bottom of the crate was a small, leather-bound journal. Its pages were brittle, the ink faded, but the words were clear. "He's in the walls. He never leaves." Ellen's hands trembled as she read. The journal belonged to Margaret Whitaker, Old Man Whitaker's sister. It chronicled her life in the house, her growing fear of her brother, Elijah, who had returned from Vietnam a changed man. He was paranoid, violent, convinced the government was watching him. Margaret wrote of noises in the attic, of Elijah's late-night rants, of objects moving on their own. The final entry was dated June 12, 1974. "He says he'll never let me go. I hear him now, in the attic. I'm sorry." Ellen closed the journal, her breath shallow. She didn't believe in ghosts, but the words chilled her. She gathered the papers and photographs, intending to show Mark. But as she stood, the attic door slammed shut. The flashlight flickered, then died, plunging her into darkness. She fumbled for the crowbar, her heart pounding, and called out, "Lily!" "Mark?" No answer. The air grew heavy, oppressive, like a storm about to break. Then, from the far corner, came a low, deliberate tap. She froze, her eyes straining in the dark. The tapping continued, slow and rhythmic, moving closer. She backed toward the door, her hand shaking. Cleveland Cavaliers, but the tapping stopped. The door creaked open, and Lily stood there, her face pale. "Mom, what are you doing?" Ellen forced a smile, shoving the journal into her pocket. "Just looking around. Let's go downstairs." That night, Ellen showed Mark the journal and photographs. He was skeptical, dismissing it as the ramblings of a troubled woman. Margaret was probably mentally ill, he said. And Elijah? Who knows? People disappear. It doesn't mean anything. But Ellen wasn't convinced. She couldn't shake the feeling that the house was hiding something, that the noises Lily heard were connected to the Whitakers. The next day, Ellen visited the town library, a squat brick building with flickering fluorescent lights. The librarian, Mrs. Caldwell, was a wiry woman in her 70s who knew every rumor in Willow Creek. Ellen asked about the Whitakers, keeping her tone casual. Mrs. Caldwell's eyes narrowed, but she obliged, pulling out a box of microfiche and newspaper clippings. The Whitakers were a prominent family in the 1960s, but their reputation soured after Elijah's return from the war. He was erratic, prone to public outbursts, and rumored to be involved in illegal activities. In 1974, Margaret vanished, and Elijah was suspected, but never charged. The house was abandoned soon after, and the Whitaker name became a cautionary tale. One clipping caught Ellen's eye, a missing persons report for a local girl, Sarah Thompson, dated 1975. She was last seen near the Whitaker house, but the case was never solved. Ellen's stomach churned. She asked Mrs. Caldwell if there were other disappearances. The librarian hesitated, then mentioned 2 more cases, both young women, both in the late 1970s, both linked to the house. "People said it was cursed," Mrs. Caldwell said, her voice low. "But that's just talk." Ellen left the library with more questions than answers. She didn't tell Lily, not wanting to scare her, but she couldn't stop thinking about the journal, the photographs, the tapping. That night, she and Mark argued. He wanted to sell the house, move back to Chicago, but Ellen refused. She needed to know the truth for Lily's sake. They compromised. They'd stay, but Ellen would stop digging, and they'd hire a contractor to inspect the attic for structural issues. The contractor, a gruff man named Tom, found nothing unusual. No leaks, no loose beams, but as he packed his tools, he mentioned something odd. "There's a hollow spot in the attic floor," he said. "Under the crates. Could be a storage compartment. You want me to open it?" Ellen's mouth went dry. She nodded, and Tom pried up the floorboards, revealing a small, metal-lined compartment. Inside was a duffel bag, its canvas brittle with age. Ellen opened it, her hands shaking. It contained a coiled rope, a rusted knife, and a bundle of women's clothing. Scarves, a bracelet, a pair of earrings. There was also a Polaroid, faded but clear. Sarah Thompson, bound and gagged, her eyes wide with terror. Ellen called the police. The investigation was swift and brutal. The duffel bag was linked to Sarah Thompson's disappearance, and forensic analysis confirmed traces of blood on the knife. The clothing matched descriptions from the other missing women. Elijah Whitaker became the prime suspect, though he was long gone, presumed dead. The police searched the house, tearing up floorboards and walls, but found no bodies. The attic, once a cluttered storage space, became a crime scene, cordoned off with yellow tape. The Hargroves moved out, renting a small apartment on the edge of town. Lily's nightmares stopped, but she was quieter now, her sketches darker, filled with images of locked doors and shadowed hands. Ellen and Mark tried to shield her, but the truth seeped through. The town buzzed with gossip, and the Whitaker house was boarded up, its windows dark. Some said it should be demolished. Others swore they saw lights flickering in the attic at night. Ellen couldn't let it go. She contacted a private investigator, a former cop named Rachel Vance, who specialized in cold cases. Rachel was methodical, digging through old police reports and interviewing surviving Whitaker relatives. She uncovered a pattern. Elijah had been seen with each missing woman shortly before their disappearances, but witnesses were too scared to come forward. Margaret's journal suggested she knew something, perhaps enough to threaten Elijah, which may have led to her own vanishing. Rachel's biggest find came a year later, in 2024. She tracked down a former neighbor, now in a nursing home, who claimed to have seen Elijah bearing something in the Whitaker backyard the night Margaret disappeared. The police excavated the site, unearthing a small, weathered box containing human remains, Margaret's, confirmed by dental records. A fractured skull suggested blunt force trauma. Elijah was officially named her killer, though he'd never faced justice. The case broke Willow Creek. The town, once tight-lipped, erupted in debates over guilt, complicity, and the secrets they'd ignored. The Hargroves never returned to the Whitaker House. Ellen threw herself into advocacy, starting a foundation for missing persons, while Mark took a job in Portland, hoping for a fresh start. Lily, now 14, began writing poetry, her words raw and haunting, a way to process the fear she'd carried. The Whitaker house still stands, its paint peeling, its windows boarded. Teenagers dare each other to sneak inside, whispering of footsteps and tapping in the attic. The official story is that Elijah Whitaker was a monster, a serial killer who evaded justice. But Ellen wonders. The journal's words, "He's in the walls," echo in her mind, and she can't shake the feeling that the house itself holds answers no one has found. She doesn't believe in curses, but she avoids Maple Lane, and she never drives by at night. For Lily, the house is a shadow she can't outrun. She doesn't talk about it, but her poetry speaks for her. The attic listens, the attic knows. It keeps the truth where no one goes. Willow Creek moves on, its secrets buried, but the Hargroves carry them, a weight that grows heavier with time. The truth, like the house, remains, silent, waiting, and impossible to escape. In the flickering glow of their screens, Mia and Ethan stood atop the digital empire they'd built, their faces radiant with the validation of 1 million likes. Yet, as the notifications faded, a hollow ache lingered. Mia's laughter no longer reached her eyes, and Ethan's once vibrant stories felt rehearsed. They had chased the spotlight, trading authenticity for algorithms, only to find that the crowd's applause could never fill the silence within. In their final post, they shared a raw, unfiltered truth. The real victory wasn't in the numbers, but in the courage to be seen, flaws and all. The world paused, then roared back, not with fleeting clicks, but with hearts that echoed their own. For more stories that unravel the human behind the hashtag, subscribe to our channel, Tales of the Digital Age, and join us in exploring the lives that shape our connected world. Hit that like button, share with your friends, and let's keep the conversation